Hi again, folks. Y Guy here. And on my first video, I made mention to the fact that I wasn't trying to rock anybody's boat with what they believed and why they believed it and what have you. Actually, the why part, that's why I'm called the Y Guy. That wasn't exactly true, but let me explain. It is true in a sense. As I said before, if you're serving somewhere, if you're going to church somewhere and you're loving people, I mean truly loving them, and really there for them and really helping people, who would want to rock your boat doing that? That's ridiculous. But let me explain when I'm talking about rocking boat, because I do intend to rock some boats, and I'll explain in a way using some analogies. For instance, let's say our U.S. government, we know that our government, there is things going on behind the scenes that are corrupt. That's just how it is. It's in human nature. There's greed, there's power, there's all sorts of things going on behind the scenes, and but it doesn't mean that there's not good people that's working for the U.S. government. And a lot of people don't like to hear that because they're heavy into conspiracy and what have you. That's fine, but reality is there are some good, loving people that work for our U.S. government that love their families, they love strangers, they love their jobs, and they love the idea of trying to help people, okay? But that doesn't take away from the fact that there's major corruption going on in our government. Now, any good, or I should say any corporation that's out there, large or small, there are people who work in that corporation that just go to work and they're doing their best to care for their families and to love their families and to be good workers. And but that doesn't mean that there might be things going on behind the scenes that corporation's doing that is just simply corrupt and sometimes totally illegal. Well, that's what I mean when I'm saying there is corruption within the church, okay? Within any church. It's just there. As long as there's going to be people, as long as there's going to be deception going on, there's going to be corruption. It's just how it is, okay? Reality check. That's the kind of thing that I'm going to be coming against. Those are the kind of things that I'm going to rock a lot of boats. But before I do so, I felt it was a need to share, as they say in churchianity, to share a little of my testimony, just who I am, what happened to me, how did I come to this point. Well, I'm going to do it quickly and briefly as I can. I will leave out some big gaps, but this is how it goes. Back when I was 16, like most 16-year-olds, I had a dislike and a hatred for myself. So young people, I understand. I really do. And like most young people, there's just a disdain they have for themselves. Also, mine went a little beyond that. Mine went to a hatred of my parents. And I don't mean a dislike or a rebellion. I'm talking true hatred. And I don't want to get in detail on that. But I also hated most adults as well. So anyway, one day at a boiler shop in Colorado, my dad prayed with a preacher, a fellow welder, boilermaker, whatever the case may be. And he gave his life to the Lord, and knowing my dad, I'm assuming this preacher invited himself over to my parents' home. And they proceeded to talk in the living room about this religious junk that, of course, I had nothing to do with. I stayed in my bedroom and was watching my two favorite shows back to back, The Avengers, not the new one, like the movies that are out with superheroes, but The Avengers, a British sitcom, and Wild Wild West. As I was watching those two shows back to back, I heard this knock on my door, and as the angry young man that I would just shout back, "Yeah, what do you want?" And I heard this little voice behind the door asking if it could come in. And at that point, I just hollered back, "No, go away." The next week, while watching the same shows, and apparently the same time period that this preacher was coming over, I heard the same knock. This time I opened the door, and the cutest little boy, which I later on found out his name was Tony, and he was 4 years old. And he looked up at me and he asked if he could come in. Well, a little more using a little more gentleness, I responded with, no, you go back into there with your parents. And he hung his little head and walked off. Well, the next week, same time, same channel, same shows, I heard that little knock. And I knew who it was. So I opened the door just a little bit, and little Tony said, may I please come in, and I promised to be real quiet. Well, the little boy kind of surprised me because he was so articulate and how he communicated his feelings. And just this little man, I was thinking, my gosh, this kid's, I didn't know little kids were like that. Hadn't spent much time with them. Well, anyway, I said, okay, if you're real quiet. Well, I climbed up on my bed, and this little boy just jumps up next to me, and he had no inhibitions, put his arm around me, and I felt very uncomfortable with that. I didn't like to be touched by anyone, and wanted to take him off and toss him down, but I just couldn't do it. And the little boy just proceeded to be very quiet until a commercial. And come the commercial, he told me that his name was Tony and that he was 4 years old, and waited for another commercial, and he told me that he thanked me for letting him in my room, and proceeded to tell me that that God loved me, and that I didn't respond to that, of course, because I didn't love me. Why would I expect love from anyone else? And that's another story. Well, waited for another commercial and proceeded to tell me how much he loved me, and he invited me to church. At that point in time, the red lights were going off all over the place in my head, and wanting to deny this invitation and wanted to reject it forthright. But there was a little something inside of me that said, do not discourage this little boy about God. And it was just that feeling of don't do it, because I knew if I were to say no, he would ask me why. And then that's where the discouragement would come through. So I felt I had no other response but to say yes. Well, the next week came along and there was no Tony. Another week came along and there was still no Tony. Third week came along and there was no knock at my door, no Tony. And the whole time I'm thinking, I gotta get to that blasted church of his and visit this kid so I don't discourage him, and I gave him my word. So I finally, some Sunday night, I went to this little this house that the top was gutted out and turned into what they called a sanctuary, and the bottom was a parsonage. And I don't even know what the sermon was about, but I sat in the back row with closest to the back door as I could get, and there was no more than maybe 10 people there this Sunday night. And as I was judging everyone for even being there, the pastor called everyone up front to pray together around this carpeted area. And I kid you not, I cannot explain this. I don't have to defend it, fortunately. But I saw out of the corner of my left eye, kind of looking over there to my left, and I wonder if the camera shows that being my right side. Anyway, I would guesstimate about 10 o'clock, somewhere between 10 and 11 o'clock, I guess, as you glance. 10 o'clock. I saw this figure standing there, no more than 30 feet away, and I knew this was Christ. Don't ask me how I knew, I just knew. That didn't shock me so much as to who was standing next to him. It would be to his left. It was me. I was standing there. I saw me for what I totally was at that point in my life, a bitter, angry, selfish, self-centered young man that just broke my heart. I saw me for what I was, standing next to this incredible, glorious person that I didn't know, but I knew he was awesome. I can't explain it. I just can't. But I knew who wasn't awesome, and that part I can't explain, because I knew me. But I saw me for what I really was compared to who Christ was, at least as much as I could understand. Next thing I know, I don't know what happened. Next thing I know, I'm crumpled in a fetal position on the floor, on that vinyl flooring, and bawling my eyes out, crying. And I was saying to God, I don't want to be like him anymore. That was ugly. I didn't like that. That was terrible. I want to be like that other guy. I want to be like that Jesus person. Well, next thing I know, I'm getting up off the floor. My arms feel like they weigh about 50 pounds apiece. I'm exhausted. I wipe my face. And I sat there, and nobody in that building knew what happened. Everybody's still up front, just doing their little thing. I don't know how much time passed. It seemed like a long time passed. And apparently no time had passed. So I went home, and I've been a different human being ever since, guys. So anyway, there's a lot of things that I've learned over the years of 40 plus years. And some of the corruption that has been exposed to me over these past 5 years. And again, I'm not coming down against individuals who love God with all their heart, mind, soul, and strength, and who do their best to love their neighbors as themselves. But let's be honest, folks, none of us, not one human being loves God with all their heart, mind, soul, and strength. So that's one of the issues too we're going to talk about. But anyway, I'm going to sign off for now. I don't want to make this long, and I don't want to pontificate, sit here and talk about myself. I want to talk about all of us and some of the things that are going on, and some of the things that we believe that just simply are not true, folks. Just because the majority believe them don't mean they are. So I'm signing off for now, and I'm hoping to talk to you again soon. Bye-bye.